So I guess my point is the way we broke the cycle is understanding each other's history.
Yes.
And understanding the why behind it, and know that in those moments, most of the time, you're not reacting to what's going on in the moment. There's something deeper that's driving that, you know. Everyone, and welcome to another episode of Marriage Matters. This is a podcast where we talk about marriage matters because marriage matters. So that's what it's all about. So if you're watching for the very first time, my name is Glenn Coleman, and I'm joined as always by my fine and sexy wife,
Tanya Coleman.
That's who you are. Fine.
That's fine. Old school. Fine.
Fine, cuz. That's my New York Compton accent.
Oh. Okay.
You're fine. You're fine, cuz. No? Okay. Anyway, so how was your week?
My week was good. It was a very, I guess, busy week, interesting week. And it was good. Yesterday was like, it was a day. It was a full day, so can't complain about that.
You've had a pretty full week.
I've had a full...
I think we both had a pretty full week. Yeah, I've been kind of staying up late and waking up early.
Yeah. Working on business.
You know, I'll say this, shouts out to Olive. That's our dog. I'm always complaining.
I'm getting shout outs like every week.
I'm always complaining about Olive and what she does. But the other morning, Olive saved me. I stayed up late working on some stuff, and I think I went to bed. It was late for me, which is like, I think it was like 1:30, 2 a.m.
Oh, I didn't even hear you come in.
And so I was tired, and my alarm clock went off. I hit the snooze. I don't know what, I think I turned it off.
Did you hit the snooze or
I turned it off? And so I'm like, why is Olive barking at 5 o'clock in the morning? She's in here and she's squeezing her little toy.
That's what she does. She gets her ball.
And I'm like, what is she doing? And so I roll over and hit my phone. I'm like, oh, Lord, it's 6:30.
I would say, no, I'm trying to wake y'all up because it's time for me to eat.
She woke me up. So I don't know why. Because it was one of those weeks where it was just
busy.
You
have been up doing all the business financial things.
Yeah, so. Trying to get ready for getting ready. We are ready for taxes and all that kind of stuff.
All of that.
Anyway,
yes.
Yeah,
so it's been a productive week. It has been. Yep. So I think everybody's feeling it. The kids have been pulling late nights with the school work and trying to bring this last 9 weeks home. And so they've been like, oh my God, I'm so tired.
I am ready for them to be out of school.
Amen.
And we are considering sending them away for this summer. Like Bill Cosby said about Theo. Remember that? Where is he at? Away.
That's we got in trouble.
Away. They're not in trouble, but
no, they're not in trouble. But
anyway, before we go any further, I want to share the comment of the week. Every week we've been sharing a comment or a review because we really love to hear your comments. We love to hear your take on things. We love to hear. What you and your spouse or you and your significant other are doing in your relationship. Because here's the deal, marriage is not one size fits all.
Sure.
It's different strokes for different folks.
It's warm.
Sometimes, okay, go ahead. Sometimes what works for me may not work for you, or what works for us may not work for you guys. So we want to start this conversation. We just creating community. Always leave us a comment, leave us a review, what have you. But this is a really short one. You don't need to write a book, but if you want to write a book, we'll read it most of the time. But this is a really short one, so you can just let us know. This lady's just letting us know that she appreciates the podcast, and she says, I really enjoy your podcast.
Oh, that's so kind.
And that's from Charlene Marshall. So thanks, Charlene.
Thank you, Charlene,
for watching the podcast. And we enjoy sharing with you every week. So yeah. So next other thing we've been doing is giving you tips, tricks, and tools.
Yes.
That's my
So
dream.
it's on me. That's your jingle?
Yeah.
Your
Tips,
jingle?
tricks, and tools.
That reminds me of a kid show that used to come on.
Oh, that's probably where I got it from. Anyway.
Anyhow, so I guess I'm up. So this week, we're actually sharing a book that I just started reading. This book is by Cole Arthur Riley. She is a young African-American female who I actually was introduced to Cole on Dr. You're turning it. Thank you so much. I was introduced to her on the In the Light podcast that I listen to all the time. And this young woman, listening to her on In the Light with Dr. Anita Phillips, I was impressed, to say the least, with her, just her wisdom and her poise and her insightfulness about herself and her spiritual walk. She's one of those who ask a lot of questions. Smart people ask a lot of questions. And so she's not one of those where I just hear it and I believe it. Like, I got to go and research it for myself. So anyway, she shares, she talked on that podcast and I was very impressed with her. So I went and ordered her book same day and got the book the next day. Come on, Amazon, send it overnight. And I didn't pay for the shipping now. Come on, Amazon.
Prime. Well, you paid for it.
Right. I pay for it once a year, right?
Yeah.
But the title of this book is called This Here Flesh. Spirituality, liberation, and the stories that make us. So Cole is a creator of Black liturgies, and liturgies are basically stories. It's kind of like it. She described it on the podcast. Dr. Anita said, "Is it kind of like when you go into the Baptist church and you have an order of service?" And she says, yes, it's the way that we do things, basically. So she takes these beautiful liturgies. You can hear scripture, her family history stories, and the stories of Black people in her writing. And it's so beautiful. And I am, this is for me. I feel like I'm in a phase in my life where I'm growing and evolving as a person. I guess we always are. But I'm seeing life from a different perspective. It's like the closer that I get to 50, things look different on this side. And so just growing and evolving as a person, as a woman, really, and really understanding culture and even Black history for me, going deeper into that understanding and being more connected, because I really feel like I have not been connected, not to the history, and I think when you learn the history, you have greater understanding of today. So that's kind of the journey that I'm on, but we wanted to share this book with you because, as we always talk about, when we're growing individually, we're growing as a couple, and it's fruitful for the marriage overall. So yeah, check her out. This Here Flesh, Cole Arthur Riley. She is on IG, and posts some really great things. I think she does like a prayer in the mornings and things like that. So really cool young lady. Yeah.
Okay.
She reminds me of our oldest daughter. That's, she's a smarty pants. I like her.
Well, thank you for that tip, that trick, and that tool.
Yeah.
And that's a great leadway into our topic for today. You said sometimes you can't understand the present without understanding the past. So that's kind of what I want to talk about today. So I'll start off with something real deep. Newton's third law. What is it? You know what it is? Don't read the notes.
No, tell me, because I'm not even trying to act like I remember this.
So
heard of it, but
it's
don't
for
remember.
Every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction.
Yes, I do know that.
Yeah. So which means that every action, in every action, there's a pair of forces acting on two interacting objects. The size of the forces on the first object equals the size of the force on the second object. But there's also something called pre-action. So I don't want to get into all that. So I'm saying that to kind of apply that to relationships, and this is Newton's laws of motion, or is it relativity?
Relativity.
I don't know.
Is that the word you're looking for?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Is that what it is?
You guys confirm these things before you say
before
them
we say them.
air, boy.
I know, that's why I was like, is that what it is? I just know it's Newton's law. It's one of Newton's law. I looked that up that much. Anyway, you know what I'm trying to say.
You got a deep dive.
My bad. Anyway, I want to apply this to relationships, but I think this law doesn't always function well in relationships.
Okay.
And what I mean is this: a lot of times we are always, it's like our action is always a reaction to something in the relationship. So if you hurt me, then I'm going to hurt you. Or if you scream at me, I'm going to scream back at you. Or so it's like a lot of times, or it could be, it's just a lot. I'm going to give you you give me the silent treatment, so I'm going to give you the silent treatment. And I just don't think that is a great way to function in a relationship, because it creates this vicious cycle of always being at odds with each other. Sure. And always trying to one up each other. And I always say this, I tell our clients this: somebody has to be brave enough, somebody has to be big enough to break the cycle. Absolutely. And that's usually the person who is sick and tired of trying to one up their partner, and it's like, you know what? I'm gonna quote unquote, I'm just gonna take one for the team, and I want to just talk a little bit more about that. But before we go forward, I want to hear your thoughts
on this equal and opposite reaction.
Yeah.
And I think most people will say that it's pettyisms. That when we basically give what we've been given, we're being petty, or we're holding grudges, and that does not it doesn't move us anywhere. Yes. We stay stuck. Yes. And so I think you use the word cycle. So we're just kind of on the hamster wheel going around and around and around, and we're going nowhere. We're exerting all of this energy and we're going nowhere, But as soon as one of us decides to stop, to get off the wheel has to stop to let at least one of us off. Yeah. And that person is going to see things from a different perspective. So I agree with you. It's ineffective. If you are wanting to move forward, if you're wanting to heal, if you want to resolve the issue or issues that you're having, at some point that behavior has to stop. Yeah.
And that's so great. I like the analogy you gave about the hamster wheel. And that's how a lot of people are in their relationships. And that could be a relationship with your spouse. That could be a relationship with a coworker, with your manager. That could be a relationship with your kids, with your parents. And it's always this cycle. But one thing for me, because I was that person that I had to prove, and we kind of talked about this last week about when I see something that's not right in my eyes, I want to immediately correct it. Right. But I was one that I wanted to prove to you how right I was. It wasn't enough for me to be just right. You're going to know how right.
Tell me more.
I was. But no, I'm just saying. And so I always wanted to prove my rightness. And what was most important for me in our relationship was my rightness. And the problem with that is that most times everybody's right in their own eyes.
Why did you feel the need to prove your rightness, though?
Well, we'll get into that.
Okay, I'm moving ahead too much. All right.
No, you're not moving ahead too much. But I will say it was the laws of motion. I looked it up. I was right. See, I be knowing some stuff. Good job. I told you I was right.
You know some stuff.
See, I told you I was right.
No, you didn't tell me you was right. You wasn't sure. Right. So I'm make right. Sure that you are sure.
This is my rightness. No, I'm just joking. But no, so and I don't think it's just me. I think most people in that's why people argue.
This is why people get fiery mad.
Yeah, because you want to. So, but one thing that really helped me is, and I know this maybe not apply to every situation, but one thing that really helped me in that situation is just the question you asked me: why do you need to be right so bad? And when I really started tracing that back, I think for me, it was, as you know, I was never that kid. Well, first of all, I wasn't allowed to talk back or say anything as a kid.
Defend yourself or advocate for yourself.
And I'm not saying that that's totally wrong. You know, we talk a lot about that. You know, about and I had a great childhood. You know, and but my point is, I think that. You know, my father, he was very, he was a disciplinarian. He was, there's no talk back. My word is final. My word is law. He didn't play nah game. You know, you heard me? But I think then I kind of carried that over into as I grew up and just in some of the other circles that I was in, maybe some of the jobs I was in, and working under people who was that same D type personality. Don't question.
Right. Do as I say.
Do as I say. If I want your opinion, I'll ask. I'll tell you what it is.
I'll tell you what it is.
That kind of thing. I learned to draw back and draw back. And then once I went back, I retreated so far into myself, I kind of had the opposite reaction. I'm like, ain't nobody gonna tell me.
Right.
So I overcompensated for it. But my point is if when it came to you and I, even, for you, and you said it last week, you don't like anybody telling you what to do.
And there's some history to that.
And that's what I was going to say. So when you would react to me that way, and even when, like we talked about it last week, and I said, you may want to try this, and you respond to me in a kind of a attitudinal, if I can say that.
In my high voice, as you would say.
Yeah, in that kind of way, that doesn't, when I took the time to understand the why behind why you reacted that way, it helped me to heal and help me to deal with my stuff. So I guess my point is, the way we broke the cycle is understanding each other's history.
Yes.
And understanding the why behind it, and know that in those moments, most of the time, you're not reacting to what's going on in the moment. There's something deeper that's driving that, so I've been talking for a while.
So, I've seen this pattern. I've seen it in us. I've seen it in, working with other people, working with couples. When there has not been any room for your voice or for your feelings, like you said, you suppress those things. And we talked about it last week. You adjust your natural bent to fit someone else and to fit the circumstances. Yeah. And after a while, it becomes normal. The abnormal becomes normal to you. And so in every situation, you're adjusting yourself. We can use that word assimilate. We're assimilating, to different circumstances and situations and fitting people's needs and their perspectives of you and all of this kind of stuff. And so it's like being silenced, But then eventually, that's not who I am. And who I really am, especially when you start doing your work of growing and healing, who you really are begins to come to the surface. And all of that is uncovered. Through the process, though, there's a fight that's happening. There's a fight that's happening between what is normal now and what feels abnormal because you haven't been that person, right? This the fight between the authentic you and the inauthentic you. And then when you in the process you're reacting to people, not necessarily responding. You're reacting to people, to your spouse. We'll use that out of that place versus actually responding. But it's all coming. It's triggered from these old wounds.
Yeah, and so again, so I guess
were you near me to tell me to hurry up?
No.
Oh, okay. I just asked.
Why did you respond that way?
I asked the question. I was fine with it. You were just trying to touch.
No, that's where my knee is.
Okay. All right.
Well, you made me forget what I was about to say.
I apologize.
Yeah, so my point was all of that's important to know all of that because now it changes the way I view you in that moment. And it helped me to de-escalate those moments and to help me to step back and say, okay, and I've said this before, but I'll say, okay, this is not the now Tanya that's responding to me. This is the repressed and suppressed Tanya fighting for her voice. And so it helps me to back off and say, okay, well, let me just let her, because for me, the ultimate goal is to get to this solution or to get to this resolve that we're trying to get to. I think a great example of this is our good friend Tabitha Brown. Shout out Tab.
Sister Tab.
Shout out. Come and hang out with us on the podcast one time.
We have to have you and Chance on. Yeah.
But it was when Wendy Williams said some choice words about Tab.
Had some opinions.
And, everybody was like, ooh, and so they just knew when Tab responded, she was going to be, look here, woman, you don't tell me. But Tab, she said something when she responded. And she responded in such a loving and kind way. Just the only that Tab could, But she said something. She said, oh, the hurt. In other words, what she was saying was, who hurt you so bad that you have to tear me down? And a lot of times when people start to tear us down, we automatically, and it goes back to, we're not secure. And so now here's this person that don't know me from Adam saying these things about me that aren't true, that's not my motive. I know what my motive was. So why do I get so upset when they respond to me that way? Because that goes back to number one, not knowing the why behind them and then not being secure in who I am in the first place. So on that note, so there's a story that Stephen Covey tells. And he said he's on the subway one day and there was a dad and there was like 2 or 3 little small kids. And the dad was just sitting there on the train and the kids were like terrorizing the people. I mean, they were running, swinging from the bars and just, screaming, how kids can get. And, everybody on the, car was getting, it was like, and then they're looking at each other like, So Stephen Covey says he goes over and sits next to him and says, sir, your children.
His dad's kind of zoned out.
Yeah. And so the dad looks up and he realizes the kids are, and he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. We're just coming from the hospital. Their mother just died. My wife just passed away. And so here, I bet a lot of the people on the train were probably like, this is a horrible father. And he needs to learn how to control his kids and all this stuff. And these kids are misbehaving or whatever. But this man has just had one of the most tragic times in his life. So that right there, understanding the why behind people's action is so important. There's this saying that the lowest form of human knowledge is opinion because it requires no accountability and no understanding. Yeah. That's the lowest form. And we do that all the time. How many times do we make snap judgments or we look at a person and, we
just have something to say.
We have something to say.
Hello.
I remember this.
Listen, hello, me. Who else?
I remember, maybe I shouldn't share this, but I'm going to share it anyway. But I remember my sister told me this. I remember when she had her first kid, and she said, when I used to go in the stores, I used to see these moms in the stores with their kids and their hair wasn't done. And, they just threw something on and, sweats and a t-shirt and they're in the store and like, oh my God, I can't believe they're in the store looking like that. Until I had a baby and, she's like, sometimes you're just you got to get where you got to go. So again, it's knowing. So that opinion is no accountability and no understanding. The highest form of human knowledge is empathy.
I love it.
Because it requires us to live outside of our own ego. It requires us to get outside of ourselves. Yeah. And that's why, I have this thing, when I'm driving and it's like, look at this idiot. But it's like, I thought to myself one day, you know what? At some point in time, I'm probably that idiot who just
I remember
did
somebody
that.
told a story about you.
Oh yeah, shout out to Renee and Johnny Jones. I did cut my coworker, her husband. I cut him off in traffic one day. I knew the company he worked for, and I cut this truck off.
Never thought it was.
And I was like, what if that was Johnny? I was like, what are the odds? And then all of a sudden my phone rings and Renee goes, are you on 210 right now? I'm like, yeah. I said, was that Johnny? She's like, yes. I was like, my bad. So I was that idiot. So for me, it helps me to think, okay, maybe they're in a hurry. Maybe they're, you don't know what's going on in people's lives.
Right.
So what do you?
Yeah, I completely agree that, empathy, I think empathy is huge. I think earlier on in one of our podcasts, probably when we first started, we talked about having, compassion.
Okay. Yes.
Having self-compassion and having compassion for your spouse. And I think the same thing applies with empathy, having empathy for people. And it's difficult. Why is it so difficult for couples to have empathy for one another or for their family members? It's difficult to have empathy for your children, and I think it's because this is where we let our guards down. This is, within this relationship is the safe place. And I can empathize with other people, but I have a harder time empathizing with you. But I think empathy, it changes everything. If we can just slow down and listen, ask questions, to understand what is happening in your spouse's day, their life, what happened today, if, there was a loss and maybe it's coming back around to the time that happened and maybe they're experiencing some feelings of grief or whatever it is. So empathizing and not assuming, or placing judgments and then operating in offense.
Yeah. And I think the biggest thing for me in working and growing, and again, I'm still growing in this area, and this is probably one of the biggest areas I'm growing in. I always say that, but for me, one of the biggest things, I had to get myself out of the way. Ego is what stops us.
Sure.
Because in order to do that, like I just said, it requires us to live outside of our own ego. And even when, I had this epiphany once when I was dealing with one of our girls, and they spoke to me in a way that I did not appreciate. I'll just say it that way. And I really realized in that moment, it really wasn't about what they said, how they said. It was the fact that, and I'm not saying that the kids should not respect our parents, but it came from a place of, I'm bigger than you. I'm you know what I'm saying? It was about me.
It was pride.
It was pride. Thank you. And I think a lot of times that's what happens. That's why we react that way, because you're not gonna, I remember growing up, it was all about, you're not gonna make me shame, or you're not gonna embarrass me. And even like, when you're in the store, you know how I go when you're in the store and you sitting at the kid acting up and you turn and tell your kid, you better not ever do that.
Right. That kid is like, what are you talking about?
But in that moment, what's that about? That's not really about, it's not about the child. It's not about the child and what's best for the child. It's about, you're not gonna embarrass me. And I think when we can get ego out of the way, we can really deal with and help our spouses work through some things, and the ultimate example of that is like with Jesus. Jesus always was showed empathy to people. and allow
because
people.
he operated from a place of compassion.
He operated from a place of purity. Mm-hmm. He operated from a place of love and understanding, mm-hmm. and true intimacy. Mm-hmm. To be seen, heard, and valued, mm-hmm. and to see, hear, and value others.
Right.
Because mm-hmm. that's what we want, but we have to also give mm-hmm. that to others. Mm-hmm. So I want to what.
I'll tell you later. I can't broadcast it now. It'll come later.
Okay. Empathy versus sympathy. I always like to talk mm-hmm. about that. So what do you think the difference between empathy and sympathy is?
I think empathizing is seeing things from the other person's perspective. Mm-hmm. Pulling back and placing yourself in their shoes, so to speak, right? Mm-hmm. Where sympathy is that I see their circumstance and, I feel sorry for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess I will ask, what do you think, which one is better? Or is one better than other in certain situations?
I don't know if one is better than the other. I think empathy probably requires more action on my part mm-hmm. rather than sympathy. Yeah. Sympathy is you post your loss of your family member on Facebook and I respond, sending my condolences, mm-hmm. Sending my prayers because I feel sorry for your loss. Mm-hmm. And we say that, right? I'm so sorry for your loss. And empathy is when I sit with you and I hold your hand while you talk to me about your feelings about your loss.
Yeah. I think maybe empathy is more valued by the person in the situation.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
I would say
it's a more real experience.
And it also, empathy and sympathy, sometimes that's all I can do is be sympathetic. Mm-hmm. There's nothing that I can do, like for the people in Ukraine right now. Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess I could go over there and do something, but I don't have the ability. I don't know. Even maybe that's not a good example, but even in the situation with the person that posts about the lost loved one on Facebook mm-hmm. or Instagram, if they're in California, and it's also about your relationship with that person. Because there's some people I'm not going to go and sit because I just don't know them like that.
Exactly.
But and
empathy, that's why I say one is not better than the other because it depends on the situation.
But with people closest to us, I think the empathy
is more effective.
It's what's needed.
It's more personable.
Yeah. And I like to say it this way: empathy or sympathy is like, if you fall into a hole, sympathy is me walking up to the hole mm-hmm. and saying, "Man, I'm really sorry that you're in this mm-hmm. hole." Empathy is me getting a ladder, mm-hmm. climbing down in the hole with you. Mm-hmm.
And helping you out.
And not only help, but allowing you to fill the hole and be in that hole mm-hmm. with you as long as you need me to be there. And then say, okay, now look, let's come on and get out. Here's the ladder. Mm-hmm. Not forcing you out, but
when you're ready.
But when you're ready.
Yeah.
So I think that's the difference.
That's what I think people don't understand about therapy mm-hmm. because people will say, are you still going to counseling? Are you still going to therapy? Why are you still struggling with this, after all this time and you've been going to therapy all of this time? Because it's not the therapist's job to make this person get up out of that hole. Yeah. It's that therapist's job to sit with that person and let's figure out how we got in this hole so that we don't get back. When we're out, we don't go back to the hole. Yeah. And if we go back, we don't stay there longer because now we're equipped with the tools that we need that we can get out of the hole faster. And there's also healing that's taking place. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think, I always tell people, with grief, it takes as long as it takes. Yeah. Your healing process takes as long as it takes. In your marriage, people who have been offended by their spouses or are hurt in some way, and the offender is usually like, well, I've been doing this for whatever months or whatever. Dude, it's gonna take how long it takes.
Yeah. And I think, like Melissa Dunwall always mm-hmm, says, she's like, mm-hmm. we're story catchers.
Yes.
It's like sometimes you don't need sometimes you just need to listen to them and allow them just to share and just be there with them, mm-hmm. Even in those moments. And even like if it's between you and your spouse, mm-hmm. and again, not in a condescending or a petty way. No. Sometimes you may ask, are you okay?
Mm-hmm.
You know, or, you know, what's going on? Why are you responding? Why do you think you're responding that way? You know, why do you think, you know, I mean,
You
it's
snapped
especially,
at me. You rolled your eyes at me. What's going on?
Yeah, especially with if that's outside of their nature, if they don't usually act like that. Instead of me trying to one up or have allowing that action to cause me to react a certain way. Hey, you know, what's going on? Is everything okay? With our kids, you know, hey, what's going on? Why did you feel the need to yell at me? I didn't yell at you. You know, so what's going on? You know, did you have a bad day?
Right.
Okay, you had a bad day. Hey, nothing wrong with that. It's okay. But here's how we handle that. And, you know, I'm not gonna, but a lot of times what we do is we yell back.
Right.
And it's like when you do that though, when you react, what you do is you bring yourself down to that person's level. You know, and so especially, well, I won't get into all that because we kind of getting short on time. But yeah, so empathy. So I remember there's this one story I'll tell. Well, this actually was not a story, but it happened to me. I remember this. I was really young. I was really young in ministry, you know, and I remember it was a guy in our church, older gentleman, much older than me. I mean, at the time I was really young, maybe 20, 22, 23, somewhere in there. And Pastor Norman, he called me. He was out of town. He said, hey, such and such is going on with such and such. And I need you to go over there and just to talk with him. And I'm like, okay, what am I gonna, what was the first thing I said? What am I gonna say? I thought I had to say something. I had to say an encouraging word or, you know, I got to say something. And I prayed all the way up and I'm like, Lord, what? And when I got there and I walked into the house, I looked at him, he looked at me, and instinctively I just hugged him. And he just sat on that stool and hugged me and cried for, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes before he said anything. And I was like, and that dawned on me, I'm like, I don't have to always say anything. Yeah. So that's just being there with the person and just being present. So yeah, so that's what we need to be for our spouses. We don't need to one up them. Right. Sometimes you need to be that landing place for them. So you need to be that place for them to talk about,
to take refuge.
To talk about all of that, all of the triggers and all that stuff, and not try to fix it, and just be there and help them work through it. Because really, the truth be told, you can't fix it. That's something that they have to work through.
Absolutely.
But again, a lot of times they may not even see it. Maybe they don't even realize that they're rolling their eyes at you every time you ask them that. So just stop and, you know, and again, if you do it from the right place, if you're doing it from a place of love, a place of compassion, then you don't get the pettiness.
Absolutely. You know? I think that is, people are more open and more receptive to that. And that creates a safe place for them to land and open up. And so sometimes, you know, initially, because if it's new, they may not respond to it the way that you want for them to respond or receive it the way that you're intending it to. But if you keep it up and you're intentional about it, they will learn that they can trust you. And that you are a safe place for them. Even in marriages, sometimes it's tough to find safe places, but that's our goal. That's the goal.
You had something there?
I don't know. This is what I'm going to talk about later. I couldn't open my notes.
Okay. In the podcast or?
No.
Oh,
Me and you one-on-one. I just don't want to forget.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. Well, that's pretty much all I had. I'll close with this. I know
we're like this behind the scenes stuff, but it's real.
It's real. Yeah. We keeping it real. That's what they say, huh? Keeping it real. I'll close with this. This is a quote from Brene Brown, and she says,
"My girl,
a call to move closer to each other because people are hard to hate up close."
Wowzers!
It's hard. It's easy to sit back and judge and say, but when you know a person, and I mean like know them
intimately
know them, it's hard to hate people up close.
Yeah, that's good, babe.
So know the why behind. Don't just look at the actions. take time. And again, this takes time to do this.
Yeah.
It's not a quick thing. The other day, something was going on with the girls, and I was just like, I got to go parent. Because, it's easy just to scream at them and holler at them, but it's like, no, I got to go and parent, So that's all we got. So just remember, I also want to remind you to follow us if you're watching this on Facebook or Instagram or YouTube, and you're not following us on one of the other apps, please do so. On Facebook, Marriage Matters 0526, Instagram, Marriage Matters 0526, and Marriage Matters on YouTube. If you want to listen to the podcast, if you like listening to podcasts like I do on my way to work or from work or even at work, or when I'm cutting the grass or walking or washing the dishes or
a multitude of things.
Whatever I'm doing, I'm probably always either listening to a podcast or listening to a book.
Yep.
I always like to do this. So if you want to do that, you can find us on the Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, Anchor, pretty much anywhere podcasts are found. We are there. So that's all I have for you this week. Did you have anything else?
Nope. This is a good show. I like it.
All hearts and minds are clear?
All hearts and minds are clear, Pastor.
All right. Well, this is Glenn and Tanya Coleman reminding you that
your marriage matters.
We'll see you next week.
Bye.